With the upcoming release of Daredevil Born Again Season 2, I thought that I'd go back and review another Daredevil property, the Ben Affleck movie from 2003. It's been a while since I've seen it. I used to watch it all the time when I was a kid, but as I got older, the internet collectively decided that this was one of the worst comic book movies ever.
He's been whining all day about trying to invent that memory wiper gizmo from Men in Black.
Was he making any progress? Because I'd like to erase Ben Affleck as Daredevil.
But after rewatching this, I strongly disagree. This is the first time that I've seen this movie as an adult, and I genuinely think that it is a sincere, faithful adaptation of the comic books. There's a lot of great things that this movie gets right about the characters. I genuinely think that this is closer to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies than any other early 2000s comic book movies, in the sense that the world strikes a nice balance of reality and a stylized fictional universe, while also not being afraid of being true to the source material. I feel like this movie is paced really well. The first 15 to 20 minutes perfectly captures the origin of Daredevil. A lot of this feels like it's ripped directly from the pages of The Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. We see Matt Murdock's father, Jack Murdock, an aging boxer who is blackmailed by the mob to collect protection money for them. He instills in Matt to never ever fight, but rather study as much as possible to make a good life for himself, a life that he could never provide for Matt. The Fixer has been fixing fights for Jack to win, and when Jack refuses to throw a fight, it costs him his life. Matt gets his powers from a barrel carrying radioactive chemicals and wakes up in the hospital discovering his new abilities. The only element of his origin they didn't adapt in this movie is that there's an older blind man named Stick who trains Matt. They adapt this in the Netflix TV show, but in the movie, Matt just trains himself, which works too, I guess. I think this movie does such a good job of giving us all the crucial elements of Daredevil's origin in a tight, neat little package. Then we cut to Matt as an adult who is now a lawyer and uses his abilities to tell if people are lying or not, and when the justice system fails, he steps out at night as the vigilante Daredevil and administers his own form of justice, which I guess is sometimes not saving people who you sort of indirectly kill. That kind of caught me off guard where Daredevil just let that guy die. They also adapt the element of Matt's relationship with his religion, as he is a Catholic who dresses up as a devil and beats people up in the middle of the night. Matt has multiple confessions with the father of his church, and in fact, the movie starts with Daredevil wounded in a church. It flashes back to Matt as a child, and then the movie catches up to this moment right before the final battle with Bullseye, which is also in the church. Matt's character arc in this movie is to maybe not kill people or be motivated by vengeance, but instead be Hell's Kitchen's guardian devil. I feel like the action is pretty fun in this movie. I don't think any of the fight scenes hold a candle to any of the fight scenes in the Netflix show, but I love how acrobatic they make Daredevil, to the point where a lot of it isn't even humanly possible. But I don't care. It's great. Also, I love how much grappling he does with his billy club. That's something that hasn't really been explored with Charlie Cox's version, even in the MCU. Some of the CGI doesn't hold up too well today, but other shots still do. I really like Ben Affleck's Daredevil. I don't think I like him as much as Charlie Cox's version, probably just because we've gotten to see more of him, but I think for the time, this is probably the best you can get. I think he's pretty charming as Matt Murdock. Maybe his real life chemistry with Jennifer Garner played a part in that. I also really like his scenes with Foggy and his strong stance on helping innocent people even if they don't have the money to pay for it. There's quite a bit of range from this character, from a Vicodin chewing emo loner in his apartment to being bros with Foggy to a vengeful vigilante. I think Jennifer Garner brings a sense of emotional naivety to this role of Elektra that fits a lot better for this movie. In the comic, Elektra is this bloodthirsty, promiscuous killer that Matt meets in college and sees as a spontaneous, relatively dangerous thrill ride, at least when Frank Miller is writing her. I really like the romantic moments between her and Matt. Those moments of tension and intimacy add a much needed layer of emotion to this movie. Even though I don't know why she likes Matt in the first place, maybe because he lasted long enough during their playground duel for him to learn her name.
My name's Electra Nachos.
But she knows almost nothing about him and barely questions the fact that this guy is blind. Maybe he's just mysterious enough for her to fall in love with him. It does seem a bit rushed, and with the runtime of this movie being an hour and 45 minutes, maybe some of the scenes could have been fleshed out a bit more. However, with that said, I do enjoy the simplicity of this romance. It is something that can only happen in the movies, which is maybe why I like it so much. I think everyone deep down yearns for a mysterious romance like this. There is one moment between them that I found relatable, and it was when they were on the rooftop in the rain, and it's Matt's first time looking at Electra. They start kissing, and he pulls away because he hears Kingpin's thugs assaulting someone. He says he has to go, but Electra tells him to stay. And he actually stays. He goes back to the crib and takes down Electra, the same crib that Heather never saw after months of dating. This, to me, marks the clear difference between Daredevil and Spider-Man. There are so many moments in the Raimi trilogy where a moment like this happens and Peter has to leave due to a call of action, but Daredevil, he's like, yeah, this is what I need right now. This is what's best for the city tonight. Which I feel like is comic accurate because Daredevil is a little slut in the comic books. But I don't blame him at all. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah, I'm folding too. No question about it. Also, this sex scene feels really intimate, by the way. It's very sensual and not edgy at all. Well, maybe it was edgy just to have a sex scene in a comic book movie at the time. I know it is now. And to top it all off, Electra leaves Matt in the same way he's been leaving Heather. Jon Favreau plays another comic relief best friend to the lead superhero, just like he does in the MCU. It's basically the same character. The only thing that I really have to say about this character is, does Foggy know Matt has powers? I know he doesn't know he's Daredevil. Daredevil is not much more than a myth throughout most of this movie, but there's a moment where he throws a ball to Matt, he catches it, and scores on the mini hoop. But he also tells little lies to Matt because he's blind, like he gives Matt mustard instead of honey for his tea, and doesn't question when Matt switches the cups with him. Matt literally has a sixth sense for baddies, and Foggy knows this, but will lie to him about Electra's looks when she walks in the door. Why? But also, later at the gala, Foggy offers to walk Matt up to Electra. And maybe he's just being sarcastic when describing Electra's looks in the coffee shop, or maybe he's looking for an excuse to get closer to Electra at the gala, but nonetheless, it's something to think about. Why doesn't Foggy question Matt's abilities? Michael Clarke Duncan as Kingpin and Colin Farrell as Bullseye are the two standouts in terms of casting for me. They are the two that are chewing the most scenery in my opinion. I think Michael Clarke Duncan is perfectly cast as Kingpin. Even though Vincent D'Onofrio's performance is great and they've introduced so much more character development and backstory to that interpretation of the character, Michael Clarke Duncan's portrayal is much more intimidating. First off, he is massive. There's no doubt he was the biggest man in Hollywood at the time, which would be reason enough to cast him, but he's also an Oscar-nominated actor. He totally understands this character and uses his incredible voice to add a layer of menace to everything he says.
You know, I've learned one thing in all my years in this business.
What's that?
Nobody's innocent. Nobody.
He is a vicious criminal who isn't afraid to use any method he needs to get what he wants, but it's all behind this facade of a civilized businessman. I love how he's always puffing on a cigar, and the whole motif of red roses for his victims is beautiful. You can just tell he's having a great time on set. Colin Farrell is another guy you can just tell is having a lot of fun. He's this unstable psychopath that adds just the perfect level of insane cartoon villainy to this movie.
Bullseye, huh?
One part that I think is kind of strange, however, is towards the end of the movie, he tells Kingpin that he wants a costume.
I want a bloody costume.
And then he looks exactly the same as he did before.
Huh?
I genuinely can't tell the difference in his fashion between the two scenes. I don't know if that's like some sort of mistake and they were supposed to get him a more comic book accurate costume, or if he actually does change his costume. If anyone can shed some light on that, I'd appreciate it. Nonetheless, I still like his design. I think the bullseye mark on his forehead is pretty cool. I remember I didn't like it as much when I was younger, but it's grown on me since. Plus his belt buckle with shurikens is badass. One of the biggest reasons why I love this movie is that it's such a product of its time, in a good way. They do not make comic book movies like this anymore, and some of you might say, good. But I think there are a lot of stylistic choices that I feel aren't really emphasized in comic book movies today. This movie manages to strike the perfect balance between style and substance. There's a lot of charm that can be found, again, like the Raimi Spider-Man movies. The soundtrack for this movie is incredible. A lot of people would probably disagree and say that these songs are so dated, but the fact that they play 2 Evanescence songs has come full circle for me, where it's not cool in an ironic way anymore, but it's just genuinely awesome. The leather costumes I don't love, however. Again, it's a product of its time. It's Blade, it's The Matrix, it's the X-Men. This really is the best that they could do at the time. And hey, at least they put the double D's on the costume. Elektra's costume is nothing but black leather pants and a leather crop top. Bullseye's costume is just a leather trench coat. There's so much leather in this movie. However, Kingpin has some great looks in this movie. His pinstripe suits somehow make him look even bigger, and I love how he has his iconic cane, which is something that I don't think Vincent D'Onofrio's adaptation has. I also love in the final fight with Daredevil, he takes his shirt and tie off and it's just the tank top with the suspenders. So peak. Upon a rewatch, I was really surprised with how many cameos and references there are in this movie. Jack Murdock is supposed to lose to John Romita, which is obviously a reference to John Romita Jr., who illustrated The Man Without Fear. The Fixer mentions he fixed other fights that Jack supposedly won.
Miller, Mac, Bendis, they're all my fighters.
Miller is obviously a nod to Frank Miller, who was the writer of The Man Without Fear and just reinvented the character as a whole. Mac is a reference to David Mack, who was a cover artist on a lot of Marvel Knights Daredevil comics from the 90s and early 2000s. And Bendis is a nod to Brian Michael Bendis, who was the current writer on Daredevil at the time, and just an overall Marvel Comics legend. The criminal who was on trial, got off, and cut in half by the train is named Jose Quesada, which is a reference to Joe Quesada, who was the Marvel editor-in-chief at the time. There's a voicemail of a Heather where she basically breaks up with Matt because it's been 3 months and she hasn't seen his apartment and he always leaves in the middle of the night, which, valid. But this is a reference to Heather Glenn, who was one of many of Daredevil's love interests in the comics. She was also the main love interest in the first season of Daredevil Born Again. Comic book writer Kevin Smith, who had a brief run on Daredevil just before Bendis, makes a cameo as some sort of forensics analyst named Kirby. This is a reference to the King Jack Kirby, who co-created the character of Daredevil along with Bill Everett and Stan Lee. And speaking of Stan Lee, Foggy mentions one of their clients, Mr. Lee, is paying them in fish. And he also has a cameo in the movie as the pedestrian young Matt Murdock saves from crossing the street into oncoming traffic. The last cameo I noticed was Bullseye steals a motorcycle from Frank Miller, who plays Man with Pen in Head. I think that's all the cameos and references, but let me know if I missed any. And to round this video out, I just want to talk about some little things that I noticed and some thoughts that I had while watching this movie. Joey Pants is in this movie playing Ben Urich, which again, it's a product of its time, but that casting choice seems a little off to me. He's supposed to be more of a straightforward guy, but Joey Pants is wearing a backwards Kangol and smoking cigarettes a bunch, which I guess fits this universe better. He also writes for the New York Post, not the Daily Bugle, which makes me wonder if there was some sort of licensing issue with Sony at the time. He works for the Daily Bugle in the comics and in the Netflix series, but just not this. Feels like a missed opportunity. Also, Joey Pants appears in Wonder Man as himself.
Joe Pantoliano, Simon Williams.
Everybody calls me Joey Pants.
Yeah, of course.
I think Daredevil's radar vision is really cool. I like it a lot better than Charlie Cox's version, which we don't really see that much now that I think about it. I also think it's a really good effect for the time. They use it a lot, it's really well done, and it still holds up to this day. I mentioned earlier that I think this movie feels a lot like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, and there was one moment that hammered that idea home for me, and that was during the Daredevil Bullseye fight in the church. There is a moment exactly like the Spider-Man versus Green Goblin fight in the burning building. It's actually kind of crazy seeing them side by side. This movie came out a year after Spider-Man, so I don't know if they copied Spider-Man or if it's just a coincidence. And lastly, going back to Joey Pants for a second, at the end of the movie when he writes a whole article exposing who Daredevil is, then deletes it, what the hell kind of delete key is that? You press it once and it just goes back and deletes everything? What if you just wanted to delete the last thing that you typed? How do you get the cursor to stop? And yes, I went back to check to see if he holds it down because that's what it looks like the cursor is doing, and he doesn't. He just presses it. It sounds like an absolute nightmare to work with. And yes, that is how I'm closing this video. Overall, I was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I did. It's such a sincere and faithful adaptation of the character, mixed with a bit of nostalgia, made for a very fun time for me. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Please be sure to give it a like as it really helps me and my channel out a lot. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. At time of recording, I'm nearly at 3,000 subs, so I would really appreciate it if you help me get to that milestone. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.